Hello. Today we talked about the matrix, the community that makes up the social dynamic of where we work and where we live. It's the same kind of principle either way. And we looked at the things that set us off and that make us react in ways that we don't necessarily want. Firstly, because we can't see ourselves doing these things, we can't see ourselves reacting to whatever it is we're responding to. And secondly, because in hindsight, maybe it would be more of an advantage to have more control over our response than we do at the moment. I've had to go through this learning curve. I've had to work hard to curtail responses that I didn't want to have to certain situations and environments all the way through my life. And now I've been able to put the science together with the psychology. It starts to make sense as to why it's such a difficult job to actually get a handle of. But once it's like riding a bike, because you know that you can do that. You know that you can step in advance of a response and just give yourself enough breathing space to not create negative energy from your own reaction to anything. Now, some people are really good at this, and they hold everything really deep down inside anyway, so they've got a nice self-created shell in front of them that nobody can really see, and so they don't respond. They're just like ice men, frozen. But then there are those that do respond and can't help but the emotion bubbles up, great big, and they respond, and that is just as difficult in a different kind of way. So being able to not have to experience those moments and just see the cause of the thing that you are wanting to respond to differently, you can bypass that problem. And so where we're at now is in a position of being able to put the personal side of things, the singularity, into the matrix, the community, and reason its space, its dynamic, what it's doing there, how it affects things, how other things affect it, and you can start to be far more self-aware in the bubble that you enclose as a singularity. Everything that you see outside being your reality only, because you're unique. So you see everything completely differently to the way everybody else sees everything, because you're standing in a different position. You're looking through different eyes, and you're aware of different things all the time. So crossing places with somebody else in this matrix that we're talking about is nigh on impossible, virtually impossible, that you have any more than tiny little snap moments of sharing a perspective on anything, even when it's in familiar surroundings. So given that, it's now time to really go exploring. And that's where I'm going to delve into what you guys said on the session. Hi there. Well, I've got the paperwork out. And thank you so much, guys, for those of you who gave max marks. That's always really great to see that you've really enjoyed it that much. That's brilliant. Wonderful. And thank you everyone for the comments that you've given, because it's very interesting reading, and it's really necessary for me to understand things. I understand this comment now, and that's really important, to be able to see a kind of a context in which it can be viewed. I shouldn't have said his name, so I'll probably bleep that out. But he'll know who I mean. Anyway, I'm going to read a couple of the others, because I don't know where any of these come from. They're all anonymous. Bearing in mind that this is the first time that I have decided to do this backup course and make these videos and give you all this extra information to look at behind the scenes, this person has said today, this afternoon, thought that it encouraged further research into the concepts covered, i.e. look up in your own time. Wow, that's synchronicity. And something happens and you suddenly find yourself in a situation where someone else's path for some deep reason has crossed yours. This is what Carl Jung and Wolfgang Pauli were desperate to try and understand, and they came up with the term synchronicity, and they investigated it quite deeply. So I will leave a link to synchronicity just because that comment is there and the odds against are astronomical. So what else is here? A lot of you found it informative. That's really great to know. Chocolate bourbons and tea in the improvements department. Okay, I'll see what I can sort out about that. Tea might be difficult though. Perhaps more detail on the rice experiment would be interesting. We covered the Emoto rice experiment today, and it's an interesting concept because it looks at the possibility of influence in terms of thought and language and the carriage of thought, emotion, language, influence out of ourselves to some other port of reception, which in Emoto's case in his experiment happens to be rice. And we look at the reasons as far as we can determine why that might occur, and some people put in some technical reasons as to why it could happen that way. But I'll leave some links anyway to this experiment, and you can see the scope of it for yourself, because it does relate to our impact and the impact of things upon us right across the Matrix platform, which is the idea of the session. Anyway, now I'm going to go into the links section, and you'll find some information there on things like imposter syndrome and how that works, the feeling that you're not really where you should be, or you're not quite up to the mark of being where you should be, and you find yourself in a situation where it's just overwhelmingly uncomfortable, but you have to just blazon your way through it anyway and come out the other side somehow. That feeling is imposter syndrome, and we all get it. So don't worry, it's not a disease, it's just a thing. And what else did we cover? That we've talked about impacts and the triggers that happen between people. We looked at that a little bit earlier on. And insecurity is another big one that we looked at too, because insecurity again is something that we all share when we deal with very differently one person to the other. So we'll have a look at some of those aspects, and we'll also have a look at the Emoto rice experiment. In the meantime, if you haven't seen The Matrix, the movie, please try. Anyway, have fun on onwards and upwards, and we'll see what happens next week when we cover the topic of energy. See you then. Bye.